What is going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Young Rich podcast today. And I mean, it has been a very eventful start to the week. So the Boston Celtics obviously ended up winning their 18th banner last night. It was a bit of a disappointing of a series. If you ask me, I would have expected a more competitive series. But I mean, going down 3-0, in Dallas's position, you kind of don't expect much to happen. Nothing to, it's never been done in history for someone to come down 3-0. So you kind of knew it was over before it was over. Everybody, me specifically, had a little bit of hope that we would have seen a better game 5. Even if Dallas didn't end up winning, maybe give us one, a respectable way to kind of end the series and get beat, right? Obviously, it didn't happen that way. Boston looked very dominant. And in a position of a Lakers fan, I'm kind of like, I'm hurt because, Jason Tatum, not only someone who gets a lot of hate in the social media and everything, but Boston ends up getting their 18th banner and taking the lead on us. I know a lot of Lakers fans out there, on social media. Magic Johnson went out here and tweeted about it. We're very disappointed that, Boston got 18 before us. So, it's a race for us to get 18 and to continue competing, which... It's just, we'll see. We'll see what happens with the Lakers going forward. Big shout out to Boston, again, winning their 18th banner. They were the dominant team. This was a team that, again, we've spoke about it before. It was a team that we looked at and we questioned their ability to win. Can Jason Tatum be the number one guy on a championship winning team? Can these guys rally around each other and dominate the best level of basketball, right? Everyone said they didn't want to see Denver in the finals. Denver didn't even make it to the finals. And then everybody was on the Minnesota hype. And then everybody was on the Dallas hype. And then Dallas went in there and just got slammed, This is a huge shout out to Joe Mazzulla. Did an absolutely phenomenal job, And then I've been keeping track of him and hearing interviews and players talk about him, about how obsessed he is with the game of basketball, And he came out with the right attitude after Game 4. You should feel embarrassed, a little pissed off the way that happened. And that's exactly how they played, Jason Tatum, again, had a solid little game 5 closeout game. 31, 8, and 11, 11 for 24 yesterday to close out game 5. And this was big for Jason Tatum, just because Jaylen Brown obviously struggled for these last 2 games. Jaylen Brown did okay, but he wasn't in the efficiency range of things, right? But defensively, Jason Tatum was there. He got it early still on Luka, switched down, dunked it on the other end, and he was getting and ones. He was hitting all of his shots. He was getting after the basket. He was being aggressive again, trying to cook up Luka. It was Luka versus everybody. So big shout out to him for doing what he had to do. Especially with Jaylen Brown not having the type of impact that he had, and other players like that. So. Again, you took advantage and you forced Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic to have very tough series. Luka, efficiency-wise, the last 2 games has not looked very good. And then you have Kyrie, who just the entire series could not get it going, which really leaves a sour taste in my mouth, because that's one of those guys that was supposed to be, everyone was on his hype and his story about him being able to rewrite his legacy a little bit with this playoff run, which I still think he did in a way, for what he did in the rest of the series of the playoffs, and to get to the finals, right? But obviously you would like to see him, come out and have a couple more games or moments in this series that you could kind of leave a stamp on that Kyrie is the player, because before this series even started, everybody was out here saying this was the greatest offensive backcourt we've ever seen, and they were giving these guys so much praise, and we know the betting lines, Vegas lines said Boston's going to win this series. Boston's a more dominant team. They had 64 wins in the regular season. They've been running through everybody this postseason, right? It was Boston when it came to the numbers and the statistics and the betting odds, and everybody said Dallas was going to get it done, and I was that guy who said Dallas, was going to get it done, but mainly because I'm a Boston hater, I'm a Lakers fan. So when I'm sitting here watching Boston make it to the playoffs, to the finals again, I'm sitting here, I'm like, man, what, it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. So it puts me in an uncomfortable position. So obviously I knew Boston was the better team, and they proved that. Coaching-wise, they made adjustments that really just, didn't allow Dallas to get going. And they just took advantage of Luka Doncic being so ISO dominant. Luka Doncic being a guy who was getting picked on defense defensively. He had one game where he really showed a lot of effort on defense, and that was Game 4. Game 5, he still looked like he was just getting cooked up, carved up. And then the fact that everything runs through Luka, and and when you have an offense like that, we've questioned this about it. Someone like him compared to Nikola Jokic, where the offense runs through him and everything goes through Nikola Jokic. Nikola Jokic is looking to dish the ball away. He's not looking to score. So when you get a guy like that who Luka Doncic, everything needs to play through him. He needs to be the one controlling the flow of the offense. He needs to be the one playmaking. He needs to be the one taking all these shots, right? It just hurts you in the long run, because if you look at that game 5, you were having PJ Washington trying to create a shot for himself, and both times he tried to create a shot for himself, he got stripped. He got stripped by Tatum once, and the other time I believe Jaylen Brown came up and stripped him. But it was just, there was nobody else other than Kyrie and Luka that was going to scare this Boston's team, and they didn't let these guys get open shots. PJ Washington was forced to shoot anywhere other than that corner, right? And we've seen how bad he was this series. So, wasn't able to hit an open shot. Nobody was respecting his jump shot unless he was in that corner. So it's just crazy to see how dominating this was, and how many, negatives, red flags there were on this Dallas Mavericks team that wasn't exposed before we got to this final. So, big shout out to Boston for being able to expose the flaws in this Dallas Mavericks team, and making it hard for Kyrie and just winning defensively. What they did defensively was everything, and put that Dallas in a tough spot early, and not allowing them to make runs, not allowing any of the role players to get going, which is, again, we've all said this before, Derek Jones, PJ Washington, Derek Lively, even Daniel Gafford having moments and runs in these earlier series that just changed everything. You played Minnesota. They were giving you the lob. They were letting you take those easy lobs. They just didn't want Luka to get going, And then you see how a team like Boston, who has a very versatile centers, right? You have Al Horford, who could play the 5 when you're going a little bit smaller ball, and then you still have KP when he's out there. He's a defensive versatility is just something that we love, and that makes him so great, and you've seen that, They just made it tough for everybody. They weren't giving their role players the feel to get going, and I know a lot of people for a little bit after Game 4, after Game 3 going down 3-0, they were, questioning Luka, saying that they got to get their role players open. They got to get their role players going earlier in the series to make sure they feel like they're involved and the energy and the morale begins to grow. But there was nothing like that for this team to have. And every time they let somebody shoot an open shot, they were just not falling. PJ Washington was that guy. They let him shoot. As long as he wasn't sitting in that right corner, they were letting him shoot anywhere else. And the numbers will tell you he's not going to make that shot. He didn't make that shot, right? And so they were living with that. And then when you have a team who could just, your 5th or 6th best player can get hot from 3, it's just, it's just so hard to beat them. And I don't know, people were talking about how, Dallas was a bad matchup for Boston, but if Boston would have played Minnesota, it would have been a different series, and maybe, we could always think about the coulda, shoulda, wouldas, what could have happened, what series we could have seen, but at the end of the day, Dallas got there by looking so great that everybody was giving them all this respect, and, and this is hard to say because I'm hyping up a team that is Boston. I'm hyping up Boston Celtics right now, which is just, it's hard for me to actually do and say that, without smiling a little bit and just feeling like I'm cheating on my own team, But, Dallas looked so dominant throughout the entire series. They took out the Clippers. They took out Minnesota. They took out OKC, the number 1 seed in the West, with a young rising star like SGA who was hooping that entire series, who low-key outperformed Luka in that series, and they still got out of there alive, Shout out to the role players, So again, and then the fact that they go in there into Dallas, and Dallas just disassembles this entire team with the facts of likes of Drew Holiday and KP, who are my 2 biggest standout players in this series. Drew Holiday doing everything defensively. In the first couple games, he was just not missing a shot. And Drew Holiday was probably, in my eyes, the 2nd or 3rd most important player in this series, right? KP, when healthy those first 2 games, was up there for sure in that top 3 importance to this team. But Drew Holiday did a phenomenal job, and just the addition to adding him to that backcourt, defensively what he does, and just now he's kind of more free-flowing and less, what's the word I'm looking for? Less offensive production needed. He can kind of just sit back, be the 4th, even the 5th best player at times when it comes to scoring, and just lock in defensively, rebound the ball, play make, because they've never had a true point guard in that system. He's an upgrade from Marcus Smart, and you've seen that, right? So big shout out to them for making the team that they had. But one of the biggest stories about this entire matchup. I mean, people on TNT yesterday, they were talking about it. You win the rebounding battle, you're gonna win this series. Like, that is the name of the game. This entire playoff run for both teams. You win the playoff battle. The rebounding battle. That's exactly what you're gonna get. You're gonna have success. Derek Lively, he dominated Game 4 with 10. Game 3. No, Game 4. Excuse me. My apologies again. I'm tweaking. But he dominated Game 4 with 10 rebounds in the first half. They won the rebound battle. They had lots of second chance opportunities to score, and they won. You've seen what they did. Historical night for Dallas. Having one of the best win being up, like, what was it, like 40 something? I forget what the exact statistic is, but having a very historical night for them, right? And then you go into, Game 5, closeout game. You need to win. Boston had 51 total rebounds to Dallas's 35. You had 15 offensive rebounds for Boston to Dallas's 7. You just had nobody getting going, and then when you're getting out rebounded like this against a team that's so 3-point dominant, like, it's hard to really come back from and rally, especially when you're not making shots already, and then you're giving Boston more opportunities to go out there and score. Like this series could have been uglier. It could have been worse if Boston was hot from 3, like all 1 through 5. Everybody was hitting their shots, but there was games where you had Jaylen Brown. Like, listen, in this final series, he was averaging 29% from 3. Jaylen, and then Jason Tatum was not very good from 3 this entire series as well, below 30% as well. And you had guys like Drew Holiday, KP being your best shooter. Sam Hauser had a couple games, right? So this game could have been worse. This series could have been way more one-sided and way more high-scoring for Boston, but they were just lucky that, the 3-point shot in specific for Boston was not falling, So, this, I guess there's some positives to look at this, but Kyrie Irving, 5 for 16, 15 points in the closeout game, did not look very good, and we're going to discuss his future on the Dallas Mavericks and that whole thing going on. But one of the things I did want to talk about is, obviously, as most of you guys do understand, is Jason Tatum did not win the Finals MVP. The Finals MVP was given to Jaylen Brown, just like the Eastern Conference MVP. He has deserved it. He has been the better player this entire playoff run. I would say that. The statistics would say that. The analysts would say that. Everybody else knows Jaylen Brown deserved this award, this Finals MVP, So, listen, he played better than Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum had 2 solid Game 4s and Game 5s. Game 3 and Game 5, right? So you put together 2 good games, but just when you look at an overall consistency basis from the first game of the playoffs to the last game of the finals, Jason Tatum was up and down. You were questioning his ability to come through for his team, and you questioned his ability the first 2 games of the finals. Jaylen Brown came through and played a very efficient game the first 2 games. He was that standout. You had Drew Holiday, who gave you 31 of those in Game 2, right? And then you had KP coming off the bench doing what he did. So the questions about Jason Tatum, 39% from the field, 26.3% from 3 this series in the finals alone, and then you look at Jaylen Brown. I actually don't have Jaylen Brown's numbers up on my notes right now, which is, I don't know why, okay? But listen, you get in this situation where if you're Jason Tatum, because he did look a bit upset, but these numbers are just like, you can't reward a guy like this. We were hearing people yesterday talk about Luka Doncic could win Finals MVP if they win another game and he has a phenomenal game and then they end up losing in 6, So, they were trying to find ways to give it to the losing team for a little bit, whether it was jokes or not, but it was still being brought up because we weren't sure who the Finals MVP for Boston could be because it was just such well-rounded wins, But Jason Tatum definitely looked a little pressed when they announced that it was Jaylen Brown. Jaylen Brown was quick to say, I appreciate my brothers, my team, my duo that we've been through thick and thin, to get here. People doubted us, people hated on us. He shouted out Jason Tatum right away. So he showed love and showed respect to his peer and his teammate, the guy he grew up with, But the question about is if Jason Tatum can be the number 1 guy, the alpha on your superstar, your finals championship winning team? Like, can he still be that guy? He has still not answered that question, And I know people give him a little bit of slack because they relate him to LeBron James. LeBron James' first two finals, he didn't play very well against San Antonio when he was on Cleveland. Did not look very good. Young guy on a very undermanned team going against a dynasty like that. It's tough circumstances, right? And then the second series, when you go against Dallas, you had that collapse in that series with Dallas. Where you let Dallas have one of the most historic playoff runs and championship runs that we've seen in a very long time, in that type of atmosphere when you were the favorite to win it. You were the dominant team in the regular season, MVP candidate, for that 4 years you were in Miami, so there's a lot of, they're trying to they're giving Jason Tatum some leeway, and I respect it because, again, finals is one of those situations where sometimes you can have a couple, I'm going to drop my pen, you can have a couple, rough moments, rough patches, but once you finally have that one series where everything clicks, and then if you get there on a consistent basis, you can change the narrative of how you are as a championship, as a finals performer, right? So Jason Tatum still has to figure out all these questions, and I know everybody's out here saying Jaylen Brown's the one who won you this championship. You should be thanking Jaylen Brown for what he did, for saving your ass and allowing you to get as far as you did, right? So there is a little bit of hate to Jason Tatum and this Boston Celtics team. Social media was going crazy trying to, go after these guys after they had just won, Jason Tatum specifically for having a lackluster playoff, run in general. The first two games were rough, 3 out of 5 games, they were rough for Jason Tatum in the finals. And then the fact that he's recreating a lot of old NBA Finals moments, like the Kevin Garnett, we won, we did it type cheer, and then you had just a lot of stuff. So it was a lot of memorable stuff. Everybody was waiting for Jason Tatum to actually recreate that Kobe picture, but I know that Los Angeles Lakers fandom, everybody that I follow that's Los Angeles Lakers specific teams, or fan pages, they were all coming for his head if he posted anything like that. So smartly, he didn't post anything like that. It would have been interesting to see if he recreated one in a Boston uniform. That would have been kind of crazy. I'm not gonna lie. Kind of put a sour taste in my mouth if I seen him, especially being from Boston, doing something like that. That would have been insane. But again, Jason Tatum's still going to have to go into next year with all these question marks around his name. Can he be a top 8 player in the NBA? Can you win a championship with Jason Tatum being your number one best player in your team? You have yet to prove that. I mean, again, you have time to prove it. You're still very, very young. You're eligible for one of the biggest extensions to be making $60 million a year this upcoming offseason, so we'll see how that goes. Derek White will be up for extension as well. You just extended Drew Holiday. KP is still under contract, I believe, so you have a couple role players that may be gone. You just signed Peyton Pritchard again to a 2-year deal, so we'll definitely see how this team decides to run it back, and I know the luxury tax and the salary cap going into next year will be something that you have to look at for Boston in particular. They definitely invested all into this year, a couple later draft picks as well, so we will definitely see how that goes going forward. But looking at this finals, right, you question the Dallas Mavericks future. Like Luka Doncic comes into this series where this could have been a legacy series for Luka Doncic. You could have solidified yourself as the best player in the world, right? Winning a championship against the Boston Celtics, the dominant team that they have been all year, right? You took out Minnesota, who took out Denver, right? So that was like everyone was coming at you. You and Kyrie were the greatest backcourt we've ever seen. Kyrie leaves this game, with his head held high, going to Twitter saying, we're gonna ride together. We're gonna hold our heads high after what we've been through. We did a lot together. Type tweet, right? So there's a lot of questions to figure out. Is Luka's legacy hurt from a situation like this? From a getting gentleman sweep in this finals, like, does it hurt your name, your legacy? And I would say so, just like many other analysts and NBA sports heads would say, because listen, getting swept, right? Thank God you didn't get swept, because if you got swept, it would have been crazy. Everybody would have coming for your name. It would have been worse. They were already coming for your name after Game 3, talking about your defense. You're not getting your teammates involved, which again I'm gonna say has a little bit more to do with the defensive game planning of Joe Mazzulla and the Boston Celtics, okay, than the actual Dallas Mavericks fault, okay? So we know how talented Luka is, right? Will this hurt his MVP discussion going in the next year? I think so, right? Because you're looking at a guy who, Nikola Jokic, they didn't want to give him a third MVP without winning an NBA championship. He goes out there, he wins an NBA championship. He's seen as the best player in basketball. He goes out here, he wins another MVP, third MVP. Obviously falls a little bit short, but he has proven he could be the best player on a championship caliber team, So there's definitely some things that are going to have to be addressed and looked at. He's going to be criticized a lot going in the next year, defensively. Can you get a third star to step up in that team? Can you get a guy like a Jaden Hardy or somebody else in there to help and be a third creator, a third scorer, really, And, I was going to get into it a little bit later, right? But you look at a guy like Klay Thompson, who... we're talking about the Dallas' future, the Dallas' offseason, right? And I know Klay Thompson, we'll get in that discussion a little bit later after all this, but Klay Thompson is a guy who he's going to be a free agent. Statistically, he wasn't terrible last year. This year he scored 18 points on 38.7% from three, which is not terrible. I understand the stinker he had in the play-in game. It happens, but if you're putting him alongside Kyrie and and Luka, not only do you get a lot of good looks for Klay Thompson, you add another shooter who who can get hot. When he's hot, he could elevate this team, and uplift this team. And now you take a little bit of offensive load off of him. He won't have to create as much. I feel like he'll be in a better situation than what he was in Golden State, So that's a possible situation. That's a possible guy who he wants to get a little bit of money to finish his career somewhere and compete. And what better way to do it than in Dallas? They need a guy who they can trust. Can you trust Klay Thompson? I know it's a huge question mark, right? But, that's something that should be under discussion, because I don't think they're in the market for a guy like Paul George to bring him along. He's not only supposed to go to the 76ers, but you'll have a lot of guys who it's a contract year for them. Derrick Jones, PJ Washington, those guys are going to be trying to get paid this offseason. So we'll definitely see on who they bring back and what they do going forward, because it definitely matters a lot. But back to the Luka Doncic scenario, you heard the other day, Kyrie, let's come end it in LA. You've seen it all over social media. It was going everywhere. Obviously this is the second year with Dallas. 2 years. Are you going to be done? They just extended him to a contract that he wanted, right? So will he go a different route? Will another team want to come trade for him? Will they kind of hit a reset, use that draft capital, bring in another ball handler? We'll definitely see how this offseason goes. It's something you have to keep open and pay attention to, because again, I do think they were missing that third guy who can go get them buckets, because if you get the third guy going against the third best defender, you like your chances against a guy like that, So there's definitely a lot of things you have to look forward to going into next year. But again, I think Dallas is going to be back in a very similar situation like this next year. You have the possibility to win a championship or to make a deep playoff run with Luka Doncic any day of the week. It doesn't matter. It matters what the team is, right? But you can get away with a lot of stuff having Luka Doncic on your team. So I expect this team to be back next year ready to compete and continuing to push forward, And then the next topic of discussion, this has to do more specifically with the NBA offseason, the upcoming NBA offseason and the free agency. Obviously, Joel Embiid and Paul George were spotted on TNT pregame show together. Joel Embiid was giving his spill about the finals and about his team, he needs to go out here and add some better players, get some better pieces, and hinting over to Paul George. And Paul George just sits there and doesn't really say anything, doesn't smile, doesn't make any eye contact, kind of just pretends like he didn't hear it, we all know the whole TNT crew understood what was being on. They seen his eye contact, they seen what he was hitting at, PG did not seem too impressed, did not seem to be playing along, did not seem to, any of that stuff. So clearly, being in going to college at Fresno State, being an LA guy, you want to stay in LA, the Clippers just are getting a brand new arena for next year, so you're going to have, this brand new arena with this, you're going to want to bring in the ticket sales, you're going to want to bring people in, so you just signed Kawhi Leonard to all this money, right? The questions about James Harden, we'll see how that goes, right? But you want to bring in these big faces, you want to be a contending team, you want to be a team that can win games, make the playoffs at least every year, even with the injury bug that you have, so that way you could bring in ticket sales, you're going to be you're going to have a brand new stadium, you're going to have a brand new arena to yourself, supposed to be one of the nicest arenas in basketball after it is complete. Is it complete already? I don't know if it's complete or if it's being complete or whatever, but So you're going to want to bring eyes on you. You're going to want to have to talk about, the players you have. You want people to come watch Kawhi Leonard and Paul George. So we will definitely see how it goes. And, when you look at it from a perspective from the Clippers, what you're trying to do, you have Tyronn Lue who can make a competitive team out of nothing, I feel like. Even when they don't have their stars, they still have guys stepping up. And defensively, they're still going to be a great team, So if you've already invested all this money into Kawhi Leonard, you might as well just invest in a Paul George, because Paul George is worth it, right? He can be your number 2 scorer, number 3 scorer, depending on who else you bring in, right? But he's going to be a great two-way player. He can play defense when he's on. He's on. He's a great player. You worry about his injury history just like anybody else on that team. With Kawhi Leonard, you have the 2 most injury-riddled players in the league, So it's something you have to pay attention to, and we don't really know how it's going to finish and all that stuff. But it's definitely something to look towards to, especially with LeBron being a free agent. We've heard that he might possibly want to go to Philadelphia. That's one of the opportunities where they have the money to pay him. You have a window to win now with Joel Embiid. You don't want to wait 3-4 years for somebody to come off an expiring contract and try to build and add pieces and stuff like that. Joel Embiid's window is now, right? Especially with how he is when he gets to the postseason. His injury bug, right? His health is a concern. So you have an opportunity to win now. The Philadelphia 76ers should look at LeBron James because realistically that is a place where you can go out there and succeed. You'll be with you'll have 2 young superstars, a guy who could have won a second MVP this year, right? If he didn't end up getting hurt, who was dominating the regular season. So you have a guy who can get you through the regular season. You have a guy like Tyrese Maxey who stepped up and became a top 20, maybe a little high, top 25-ish player, Depends how you rank them, right? I'm a big Tyrese Maxey fan, so maybe I'm juicing him up a little bit too much. But, you have a young core. You would have a 1, 2, 3, even if you bring in PG. That's 3 good scorers for your team, 3 guys who are going to be playing defense, playing offense. They can get you buckets. They can also play defense. Tyrese Maxey, a young star who's just one of the quickest players in the league, so there's definitely going to be a lot of interest in that Philadelphia 76ers team, Does a guy, deal with the Philadelphia 76ers legacy? Does a guy go in there and want to take on the risk and the history of the 76ers, of being underperforming in the playoffs? You add a guy like LeBron James, who he could definitely be a playmaker, an instant playmaker, especially if he doesn't have as much offensive load in the regular season. He saves his legs. He's developed a 3-point shot, the best in his career at year, 21? So there's possibilities for this team, so we'll definitely be paying attention to how that goes going forward. But we were speaking about it a little bit before. Klay Thompson, right? Klay Thompson unfollows the Golden State Warriors. Klay Thompson, a guy who spent and built his entire career in Golden State. You won 4 championships with him. You developed and created the Splash Brothers in Golden City. You're going to go down as one of the best 3-point shooters ever, right? Top 10, top 5. To be honest, I'm just, but he's going to be recognized as one of the best shooters ever, alongside Steph Curry, the greatest 3-point shooter ever, right? But listen, they asked Draymond Green on his podcast when he first came on. Draymond Green said he wasn't sure. He did not know that Klay unfollowed the Golden State Warriors, and that it was funny to him because he doesn't think that they are going to be going separate ways, So it's interesting to see, Draymond Green come out there and talk about it, because obviously Draymond Green talks about anything. I mean, he said this during the regular season. He said Klay was going to come back. He said Klay was going to be just fine. He's going to come back to Golden State. We're not breaking up the big 3, and then Klay has his 0 for 10, playing game against Sacramento, and then after that it's just been kind of, nobody thinks he's coming back to Golden State. I don't think he's coming back to Golden State, which is, it's a bit. Listen, I understand Golden State. You have Steph Curry, who's in a much better situation to win now. It's not like, both your superstars are not very good and they're older, so they just want to kind of just play out their contracts, because they've done so much for you. They just want to play out. They just not really compete. They just want to play and play as long as they possibly can. It's not one of those situations. It's one of the situations where you have a guy who can still be a top 10 player, in this league, and he's shown flashes of it, right? And then you look at Klay Thompson and what he did in the final playing game, and how much attention Steph Curry gets, and what Steph Curry has done, multiple 50-point games this year where they lost, one including to my Los Angeles Lakers, right? Okay, so there's a lot of things that you have to consider being Klay Thompson and the Golden State Warriors here. Obviously, Klay Thompson wants to get a little bit of a bag. He wants to get paid just a little bit to finish out his career, get one last big contract, and just chill in his boat, So we'll definitely see where this all plays out. But I definitely think the top 5 landing spots, before I get into the landing spots, let me hold myself here. I wanted to compare, Klay Thompson's numbers this year into the year they won the championship in 2021, right? Listen, in 2021, 20.4 points per game, 38.5% from 3, right? This year, 17.9 points per game at 38.7% from 3. The three-point shot, which is the most important aspect of his game, and his points are pretty similar. 3-point difference. The efficiency from the floor was obviously a bit of a decrease. Rebounding, assist, all that stuff came down a little bit, right? But you're looking at a guy like Klay Thompson. When I'm looking at a guy like Klay Thompson, specifically, I want the 3-point shot. And I know there's been rough stretches this last year in 2021 as well, the last couple years of his career, where you have poor performances. You have Klay Thompson not looking like the Klay Thompson who can be a capable player, right? But if you put him in a different system, a system where you have better role players, like I said earlier, like Dallas, you have Luka and Kyrie. You could be the number 3 guy and kind of spot up and chill and just wait for them to double and boom, they can kick it out to you. They can draw up plays for you. It's a different situation, less offensive responsibility. You can kind of just go out there, play off of those 2 guys who are going to get a lot of attention, and then you could be a upgrade from PJ Washington and Derrick Jones, a guy who you can trust to hit those shots when you need him, a contested jumper, because we know Klay Thompson doesn't see a contest, right? So that's definitely a situation I think Klay Thompson can succeed when you look at his 3-point ability, his ability to score and consistently score. It's not like a PJ Washington or any of these other role players where, you can have a good 2-game stretch and in the last 3 games you're not there. You're not hitting those shots. You're kind of just there playing defense and getting rebounds, doing whatever else, right? So the 4 landing places that I can possibly see Klay Thompson going to is, number 1 is the Philadelphia 76ers, right? And the Philadelphia 76ers, why? Because, boom, if they don't end up getting Paul George, if they don't end up getting LeBron James, you have a number 3 guy who's going to be a little bit longer in his career. I'm not saying it takes Philadelphia to be a championship team, but you add a third scorer, you add a guy who can add some 3-point shooting to this team, add some spacing, just give Joel Embiid even more space, right? Who can play off the ball, as good as anybody else in the league, So you have a possibility like that, a team who needs to invest in another star that possibly pay you more at what you're trying to get in a numbers perspective, and maybe you can even add another piece with the salary left over, right? Because he's not going to be a max contract guy, right? And then number 2, OKC, a team who you've seen them trade for Gordon Hayward, right? You've seen them look for another guy who can go out there and shoot for you, right? Lou Dort struggled just a little bit in the second round against Dallas, right? You had Carson Wallace, Isaiah Joe. These guys not really hit their shots. Their shots were not falling in the playoffs. The playoffs is a different animal, right? You add Klay Thompson to that. You have a guy who can shoot 38% from 3 still, right? You don't need him to go out there and go get 20 points, 25 points again, right? But you can set up some off ball. You can help the spacing. You already have Chet, J-Dub. You have all these different guys who can spread the floor out and shoot at will, and you just add a more postseason great 3-point shooter, right? Which I think would benefit this OKC team in the long run next year for the playoffs. And then you look at Orlando, a team that just needs 3-point shooting so bad. They have a bunch of young talent, so if you end up doing a sign-in trade type deal, you can get some pieces back for that. Or if you just sign him out of free agency, you are able to pay him, right? You're not paying anybody else at this current moment. You're able to pay him what makes him happy. You add a 3-point shooter who can score for you, right? Alongside somebody like Gary Harris who can just a good 3-and-D guy. So this adds to that. This makes up a little bit for the Franz Wagner inconsistent 3-point shot this year. Boom. Orlando becomes a better team going into the next year. And then the Los Angeles Lakers, right? We've been hearing about this since last year. People were saying trade him away. Get him. Go. The Lakers go get him. The Lakers go get him. The Lakers go get him. As a Lakers fan, I I'm not going to say I don't like it because, again, the potential, right? The idea that you could have a number 3 guy, Klay Thompson, be your number 3 scorer who can play off the ball. You have Austin Reeves and D'Lo and Vanderbilt and Rui and other players who could score a little bit, so it won't be solely focused on Klay Thompson, but you need Klay Thompson to shoot the 3, help boost our 3-point percentage, and we've had a little bit of a curse. Guys come to LA and forget how to shoot. Like, it's just that simple. We've had so many guys who come out here and struggle from the 3 after they came to play from another team, and that's just, I don't know, is the lights too bright? Gabe Vincent, a guy who was almost... It could have been an Eastern Conference Finals MVP, like he was that good in that Eastern Conference series against Boston to go into the finals, to go against Denver, right? And then you had a bit of a down year. You got banged up from injury. You shot 26% from 3. He has not come through. And, Kendrick Dunn the year before, so Kendrick Nunn, excuse me. So, there's a lot of situations like that. So it will be interesting to see how the Lakers, me personally, I think the Lakers would be the 4th best team on that list based on what I'm hearing about and reading. I personally, again, I'm open for it, but only if we get the Klay Thompson that we expect and that we need, right? That's the necessity, that 3-point shooting, the guy who's going to be more of a Drew Holiday type of role. You can still play a little bit of defense, and then you can kind of just be the 3rd scorer with less offensive responsibility, which I think would be great for us in the long run, adding a guy like Klay Thompson to this team. All right, and then we're going to get into the WNBA, right? Caitlin Clark, Angel Reese rivalry. I mean, it's been absolutely everywhere. I see people very active on TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. Everybody's tagging everybody. Everybody's talking in Angel Reese's comments, hating on her, and supporting Caitlin Clark. You hear their post game interview responses blowing up. You see it everywhere. The WNBA is everywhere. Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese are everywhere. This beef that they got going on is everywhere, which is great for the scene, great for the WNBA, right? But before I get into any of the discussion, the situation that we're currently in, the possible rivalry that the WNBA could have, I want to get into a little bit of statistics, right? Caitlin Clark, the last 4 games, right? 18, 6, and 6 with a 42% from 3. And alongside that, Aaliyah Boston, a girl who was the number 1 pick for the Indiana Fever last year, right? Who had a great rookie year, was possible, I think, end up winning Rookie of the Year maybe, right? And then goes into this year, does not have a very good start to the season, and is finally rejuvenated in the last 4 games as well. 18 and 11, 11 rebounds, that is, right? And has been dominating down low and has been a great offensive presence to help Caitlin Clark, right? And then you have Caitlin Clark, who is in the Indiana Fever, are 4-2 in their last 6 games. 2 of their losses being against Connecticut Sun and the New York Liberty. For those of you who don't know, are 2 of the best teams in the league. The New York Liberty just beat the Las Vegas Aces, the 2-time defending WNBA champions, right? They won back-to-back. They took them out. So they lost the 2 great teams, and the 4 mediocre teams that they played, they won, And again, Caitlin Clark is 3-1 versus Angel Reese, and in their career, right? Obviously, Angel Reese got the first one in the national championship game. Was talking all that, was throwing jawing and all this stuff. They were talking shit to each other. Great stuff going on. Everybody was paying attention to it. Then she played her again in college, beat her. She played her twice this year in the WNBA, beat her. Right. So this is definitely, at this current moment, is a definitely one-sided rivalry, right? Angel Reese has got to come out here and win some more games, But the most noticeable thing to happen from this last game against Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark, right, 2 days ago, was the Angel Reese flagrant one, right, where she attempted to take a shot of the ball and try to make a block. It wasn't no ill intent, but it still got a lot of notice. Why? Because it's Angel Reese. Angel Reese is kind of in the Draymond Green role of the WNBA. A woman who is out here who's playing, going to be a great defensive player, is going to get rebounds, going to have a little bit more of a post game than anything else, and she's going to talk a lot. She's going to be playing physical WNBA basketball, take a couple of cheap shots here and there and let them know she likes the, stuff like that. So she's known for this. This is the role she has created, right? But you get into her post-game interview, she starts complaining about the whistle that the Indiana Fever and Caitlin Clark have, right? And this, to me, is I mean, listen, if you watch Angel Reese's highlights and you watch the shots she was blocked on and she was getting rejected on, you could see there was nowhere for her to go. Like, there was no, she tried to post up and give a little hook shot around the rim. Did not work. Why? Because she's just not developed as an offensive scorer at this current moment. She hit a couple free throws and started blowing kisses to the fans and things like that. You let her shoot the 3. She's not going to make them 95% of the time, So there's definitely a lot of ways in this offensive game to improve, to really develop a WNBA rivalry where it's like back and forth between the best two players. Because I don't even know if Angel Reese, the best player on her team. Actually, I know for a fact she's not the best player on her team, right? So there's definitely a lot of things to look for. But I mean, shout out to Angel Reese again. The last 4 games, 13-13. In the last 4 games, which has been great. She's been definitely performing better. Again, the offensive game still needs a little bit of work, inside work, post-game, stuff like that. I mean, you've seen Candace Parker and Asia Wilson be so successful throughout their careers with the inside game, the post-up, working from the post. So we'll definitely hope she can add to her offensive game, because then it just makes everything so much better. You know, you have the 2 players who are really jawing at each other, you know, going back and forth against the opponent, each other's teams, you know, going bucket for bucket type thing. That's something that could really get it going, you know, just like Magic versus Larry, you know. Magic, when he goes against Larry, he has to outperform Larry, you know, and Larry, when he goes against Magic and the Lakers, he has to let him know who's cooking, you know. So it's just one of these things that they could really use to elevate the WNBA, right? And listen, there's already a lot of people talking about it. The WNBA is being spoken of more. I've been paying attention to the WNBA for about 3 years now. This is year 3, right? And I was blessed with the opportunity that Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese came to the game, right? I was doing my best to support the WNBA before that, the first 2 years, right? I was watching the finals, I watched the playoffs, I watched a lot of the regular season games, right? I was being a fan and advocate to try to put people on and try to, you know, at least my view help, you know, and stuff like that. And so I had a couple favorite players that I used to watch. Skylar Diggins-Smith was one of them when she was still in Phoenix, right? And before she got pregnant, actually, she didn't play last year, which was unfortunate, actually, by the way. But I actually just forgot where I was actually at. So hold on, let me regain real quick. But what Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese have done for the WNBA, listen, 2 days ago, Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese topped the WNBA ratings in 23 years, the most viewed game in 23 years, right? They already broke the record and the numbers for viewership in college basketball in general, men's and women's, right? Got the most attention when they played each other this past year. Excuse me. Whoa. That's crazy. Right. But 1.3 million average viewers this year compared to 462,000 average viewers last year, right? Which means obviously Angel Reese, Cameron Brink, you know, and Caitlin Clark, I think I said her twice, right? But they are bringing more views, right? The marketing and revenue and NIL deals and all this stuff that they brought from college has translated over to the WNBA, right? And now there is girls in college basketball who are coming over and getting ready to come over, like Paige Buckers, who's one. I mean, my little sister doesn't talk sports at all, right? My little sister's out here doesn't speak of sports, football, basketball, any of that stuff at all. But Paige Booker, a girl who's coming out here and hooping and dominating in college. Now she's hearing about it. Now she's talking about her. Now I got my little sister who's out here speaking about women's basketball, right? And that just shows how much it's growing, right? The sport is growing. It's going to continue to grow with NIL deal and all these girls in college creating a Juju Watkins, another one on the way, right? They're creating this name and stuff for themselves and translating from women's college basketball to the WNBA. And I think it's going to be great for them, right? So, listen, and then when you speak about Caitlin Clark, right, again, another reason why the WNBA is what it is. I mean, Caitlin Clark adds, the WNBA attendance is up 105% when Caitlin Clark is at one of these games, right? And, you know, so I expect this league to grow, to continue to grow, right? You just added another expansion team, in Golden State, the Valkyries, right, which I think is a good addition. It is about that time to really add to a team, you know, just try to make it as convenient as possible, right? So now me personally, right, I'm not in a state of where there is a WNBA team, but now I'm Bay Area guy, so now I can be right there. It's down the street, you know what I'm saying? So it makes it more accessible, and, you know, if Caitlin Clark comes through, I'm going to be able to be there, you know? So, like, it just, the WNBA is going in the right direction. I know this year was a $50 million loss in their net profit this year, right, which is one of the worst years they've had, and also have yet to have a, you know, profitable season of the WNBA. But I do think they took steps in the right direction. One of the biggest issues with WNBA was I can't believe I'm blanking right now. I was gonna say transformation, but that's not. I can't even think. the transportation, right? Is they wanted to fix the transportation, and they invested in that this year. So it's going to hurt their pockets a little bit, but they're doing that. They're investing in viewing marketing deals with Disney Plus, with Amazon Prime, so it's good. It's good. They're on NBA TV a couple times during the week, so you can watch them on YouTube TV, on cable, and things like that. The NBA Pass, the WNBA Pass, all that stuff. So they're definitely doing the right things to grow and to continue this. You did have to invest a little bit, but I think if you continue to develop this type of storyline and rejuvenate the WNBA, I think this is the way to do it, right? Just like Larry and Magic back in the day. The NBA was on the brinks of being gone. The Lakers were going to be no more. The NBA as a whole was going to be gone, no more. Nobody was going to be playing basketball no more. And then here comes Magic Johnson and Larry Bird, and it just rejuvenated everything. The rivalry between Larry and Magic, who's going to be better, who's going to win a championship. It was Larry Magic, and look at what was born from that. Right? And then at the end of their time, you had Isaiah Thomas and the Pistons come through. Then you had Michael Jordan come through, and then so on and so forth. So the WNBA has to take advantage of this type of atmosphere, the atmosphere where it's, trash talking and storylines, because that's, as a fan, that's what we want. As a casual fan specifically, right? Dedicated sports fans are going to watch sports regardless of what's going on, but when you're a casual fan, anything that just helps bring up the storylines, like everybody loved to watch McGregor fight. Why? Because he was entertaining. He was going to put on a show. He was talking shit to everybody that came up to his face. He said what he was going to do. He did it. He was knocking fools out left and right. So it just became a great thing to watch. His energy, his passion, and they made him the face of the UFC. Right? Which is why his career in the UFC was better than anybody else's, because what he did. And then the marketing and branding he created for himself outside of UFC, So I think the WNBA really has to take advantage of this, and this is your best chance in a very, very long time with Caitlin Clark coming into WNBA and Angel Reese taking the role of the villain that we all so love and love to, maybe not personally love and like as a player, but we're going to listen to because they're yapping and talking shit to everybody else, So it's just one of those things. But now we're going to get into some NFL football today. The last topic of discussion for today. We have two things to discuss quite briefly out to close out today's episode. But before I get into the last two topics of discussion, if you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, make sure to like it, give it a 5-star rating, and again, if you like and enjoy this content, tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend, because anything helps. Every view helps and matters. All right, that's basically my free marketing of the day. So that was it. That was my advertisement. That was free. That was on myself, Young Rich Podcast. Go check it out. Right, but Brandon Ayuk situation, everybody's seen it. It's all over TikTok. It was, in my eyes, a bit petty, going to TikTok and having your girlfriend record a conversation with you and Jaden Daniels on the phone, because for those who don't know, they played together in Arizona State, when Jaden Daniels was still a freshman. So, it was, in my eyes, a bit petty, right? Because you're going out here and you're sharing your information and you're saying, they don't want me out here, and stuff like that. And Jaden Daniels gives you a little reaction like, where to go, Washington, So It's a bad look for Brandon Ayuk for sure, because, even after the Super Bowl when they lost, there was cryptic tweets coming out from his family members and things like that. And I understand it's a whole, you're trying to have some sort of leverage against these players and these teams so you can get paid, right? Maximize the amount of money you're getting paid, which I don't have a problem with you getting paid, right? But I have a problem with, or I feel some type of way when you're going out here and having this type of, let's say, meltdown-ish type situation on social media. It's just not a good look for the franchise, for the San Francisco 49ers, because you had Deebo Samuel had that same kind of issue before, and Deebo Samuel's issue, he was ignoring little kids when he was at his mini camp because he was pissed off he wasn't getting paid $50 million a year, $30 million a year. So it's just, it's just a bad look sometimes, right? And it can hurt your name, and just the way people look at you. Because I would rather keep professional business, personal business to yourself on its own thing. We don't need to go out here and blast, our team or our situation or what's going on, right? It's just not cool. Just no need to do it. Just keep your mouth shut and just go through and get paid. Like, these guys are fighting over, an extra $1 million here and there, compared to what majority of the other NFL players make, right? So this guy's getting ready to get set up for life, right? Whether he gets paid $20 million a year, $30 million a year, or 35, he's going to get set up for life in the next 4 years of his life. So, really, you shouldn't be upset at this current moment. And I get it, upset. You be a little upset about the money you want, you deserve, and all these things, right? But, and then you look, Brandon Ayuk, 7th in yards, 31st in receptions last year, which was the biggest thing about his game, the yards per catch, which he was 2nd in yards per catch, 7 receiving touchdowns last year. This was last year, right? And I compared him to a couple of notable wide receivers who have gotten paid, right? Devontae Smith, $25 million a year. Jalen Waddle, $28.2 million per year. St. Brown, $30 million per year. Now, me personally, I would take Amon-Ra St. Brown on those. Out of those 3 guys right there, I would take Amon-Ra St. Brown above Brandon Ayuk. That's me personally. I think he is in a different situation in Detroit, and he's the number 1 guy out there, right? You don't have the benefits of having Christian McCaffrey. Detroit is a great team, don't get me wrong, but he doesn't have the benefits of having Christian McCaffrey, Kyle Shanahan on offense, Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and all these other guys, right? So, I just think, to me, St. Brown is in a different situation. He does a lot for himself, and he doesn't have a lot of wide receiver help. Tight end help, sure, but wide receiver help, it's a little low. So definitely looking into, definitely would take St. Brown over Ayuk, right? So Brandon Ayuk would need something between this realm of money, right? Because Devontae Smith, you need more than Jalen Waddle, you need more than Amon-Ra St. Brown. Depends on how you look at him. You could have more. I mean, I wouldn't be mad if you give him more or less, right? But so you're kind of looking, if you need to pay him, more than 28.5. You need to pay him less than 32.5 because that's A.J. Brown numbers, right? And C.D. Lamb and all these other guys are going to get paid 35 or more. So you're looking at that $30 million realm, right around that St. Brown level. Can San Francisco afford to do that? I mean, I don't know how they've been able to afford half the shit they've done so far in these last 4 years. I know they're definitely moving contracts around like crazy, but the way they move money around is insane. They do it very smartly as well because, obviously it hurt them this year. They actually were against the book, so they lost the conditional, 5th round pick this year. But, so we'll definitely see. And this just screams trade rumors. Like, I'm waiting for this guy to get traded. I've already spoken about the teams that I think him and T. Higgins can come with. T. Higgins just got re-signed on the franchise tag back to Cincinnati, so now he's the only guy kind of just lingering around. And it's because he just wants the money, obviously the guaranteed money especially. So then you start thinking about trade situations. Again, it's the same trade teams I've been talking about, right? You have the likes of, you can go Carolina. You can go, like JD5 said, you can come to the Commanders. There's teams that will come out here and take you. You can go to New England, a team that needs a number 1 for their QB1, right? So there's a lot of places that will take you that could use it. Pittsburgh Steelers is a place that they could use you alongside George Pickens and to help out Justin Fields or Russell Wilson, whoever it is, right? So there's a lot of places that would openly take you, that would pay that type of salary, give you the money, right? It's just depending on if San Francisco is going to be active, So we will definitely see what happens for him going up this upcoming offseason. We'll definitely pay a lot of close attention to his situation this upcoming year, because I hope that if he does get traded, he goes to a team where he'll really be benefited, like one of these younger quarterback situations, so that way some of these younger teams can thrive a little bit, But with that being said, hopefully y'all enjoyed today's episode. Getting active. It's going to be posted a little bit later in the day, but got to get it done when I got to get it done. Woke up a little bit late today, hit the gym, so I was a little delayed on the upload today, but we're here, we're active. TikTok's been going crazy, so appreciate all y'all for going about that. YouTube Shorts have been doing pretty good as well. So again, just want to appreciate all y'all for showing me support. And with that being said, if you watch this on YouTube, like, comment, and subscribe. Turn on your post notifications and tell a friend to tell a friend to tell a friend. I'm out.